Learning. And they are actually the kind of kingpins right now in terms of supporting districts who are embarking upon this work. And so we'll be using them as we begin to build more of a systematic framework to support students who need that, and to support adults that work in our community and families as well. So I'm going to give you the short version, which is the top link.
There's a lot of talk these days about SEL, Social-Emotional Learning. But what exactly is it? Social-emotional learning is the process of learning social and emotional skills. And it's just as important as learning reading or math. This learning process is most effective when it begins early and continues through high school. Social-emotional skills are essential for success in school, work, and life. With SEL, students learn to manage their own emotions and behaviors, have empathy and show care and concern for others, solve problems effectively, make responsible decisions, and maintain healthy relationships. Students learn to recognize what's happening inside them and to be aware of their emotions, which helps them deal with strong emotions and impulsive behaviors. It helps them stop, take a breath, and think about a situation before acting. Students learn to identify others' emotions and perspectives, which helps them empathize and show compassion, no matter who they are or what their background is. It's not difficult to imagine how this is important in the classroom and in life. Students learn to solve problems in peaceful ways and communicate assertively about what they need or want. This helps them get along with other students and get the help they need from adults. When students learn to make responsible decisions about their lives and their future, things can turn out better. Research shows social-emotional learning makes a difference. Students who participate in SEL do better academically, have improved attitudes and behaviors, and act in delinquent or disruptive ways less often. In the United States, students with strong social-emotional competence are twice as likely to earn a college degree and nearly 50% more likely to graduate from high school and have a full-time job by age 25. Just as important, students who are socially and emotionally competent have more friends. This means they're more likely to feel connected to school and do well, and less likely to be left out or bullied. Simply put, by participating in social-emotional learning, students learn the skills to succeed in every facet of school and the rest of their lives.
So certainly a little bit oversimplified, but because it's again another massive undertaking. However, kind of gives you a little bit of a view into the thinking around social-emotional learning. A couple of moves that the schools have made prior to, say, Colt Andrews maybe 2 years ago, and the other elementaries certainly this year, is that in every system that we want to intervene or provide some level of support for students, we've got to have some kind of a core. As I explained earlier about, we expect that 80% of our students be successful in, whatever our standards are. And whether we're talking about social-emotional standards or academic standards. And so we didn't necessarily have kind of a core to look at, but, or that was used. So, different flavors in different schools, even in different classrooms, social-emotional learning and or behavior could be different from classroom to classroom. And so one of the wonderful things that the elementaries has done is taken on and adopted the practices of responsive classroom. Colt Andrews is a bit further along because when Mrs. Wolf was here, she started that, I think a year, maybe two before. 2 years before. And so the other elementaries have now adopted those practices. And so it's certainly in the infancy stages because none of this happens overnight, okay? The middle school has adopted restorative justice, and the high school, I'm not completely sure right now. I think they have a little bit more of their own version because they've had those kinds of social competencies for a long time. So that the little work needs to be done there. As I mentioned earlier, it's important that we understand that it's not only a school responsibility, it's not only a teacher, classroom, principal, central admin responsibility, but that it's also a community responsibility. And we have that sort of covered. I'm also work with HES, the liaison for the district, with the HES group. And while this is really difficult to read, again, you can look at it, it does actually show how the community interfaces with the district. And we have a number of programs that we, that are at the high school in particular, and we're beginning to work with the middle school to help support mental health and well-being and general wellness through the HES group and the work that we've done with schools. I just wanted to mention that as a piece of, you know, what we've been doing. A couple of years ago, we talked about NCII, which was a grant that I had received, excuse me, about 7 years ago. And if you recall, we worked with the University of Connecticut and developed a pilot series. This pilot series is equivalent to approximately 5 graduate level courses. One is in the principles of database individualization, one in intensive intervention in reading, one in math, one in behavior, and the last is an overarching coaching that happens throughout the entire group. So far, 25 Bristol Warren special educators have completed 3 of the 4 newly designed courses. The 4th is in session right now and will be completed June of 2018. This is becoming a national model for training of special educators, and I was in DC in January, and they are beginning to look at how to take the pilot that we created, I along with my partner over at UConn, and bring it to the institutions of higher learning, to bring it to in-service teachers. It is something that is going to be, again, a national need. It's sponsored by and supported by very big organizations out there. The Council for Exceptional Children, IRIS, which is a center for disabilities, and it houses a lot of professional development. And so there's been this has been like incredible, and our teachers are central to that. Yeah.
Just a quick question. So the first bullet, 25 special educators, are those special educators out of how many?
I think I have about 31.
Okay, and are they the aides as well as the teachers?
No, this is more instructional. You needed at least a bachelor's degree,
okay.
Because they're really graduate level courses.
Okay, so given, you know, I think it's great the social awareness program, but since that, if a lot of the aides are the ones that really have a lot of the one-on-one, you know, as they guide these students through the school system, are your aides also in line to be trained with some of these techniques?
Again, this is really instructional for somebody who is already a certified teacher, okay? What I do think happens, okay, is as we work through the steps in intensive intervention, we have looked to teacher instructional aides to support students, but the teacher remains the supervisor. So there are programs that actually the instructional aides can carry through as monitored by the teacher. So we are asking a lot more of them than we have in the past. And so more on a small group, so our instructional coach may sit with a couple of teacher assistants and train them in how to do PALS is, for instance, an intervention system. It's peer-assisted learning strategies, and so they may train them how to do that. most of those interventions are pretty scripted at that level. And so, you know, it's about them kind of making sure the students are on task, that they're able to follow the direction and the scope and sequence of that lesson, but always supervised by a teacher. Okay?
It's just that I know that your aids are awesome. I know this, but it just seems sometimes the implementation of the follow through on some of these at the A level, it may be somewhat a little less inconsistent than ideal.
I can address that in a minute, okay? And so I've also worked, can I just finish this so I gotta go through this? We've also worked with higher ed partners. I am on the advisory board at Johnson & Wales, and so they're looking at this as graduate level work as well and implementing in Rhode Island through the support of the Rhode Island Department of Ed and the Rhode Island Higher Department of Ed. I don't know exactly what their name is.
Council on Post-Secondary Education.
Thank you. Okay. And Rhode Island College as well. As a group, we have been recognized and visited by Westerly, East Providence, Blackstone Valley Prep, New York City schools. We have coming up on May 1st a visit from the University of Illinois, Chicago, someone from the Southern Methodist University, and they're both involved in the Council for Exceptional Children policy research. So we're really right at the very focal point of, some breaking science in terms of special education. Yes, sir.
Just, it was just a follow-up. You said 25 of about 31 have completed. Are all 31 in some stage of this?
Well, I had a couple that chose not to participate. It was voluntary. A couple were like retiring and shortly, or actually 2 that did not participate are in a different grad program. So they didn't feel they could do both grad programs at the same time. Okay? All right, so, and then we move to data-based individualization. So it's what do I do with those tier 3 students who, despite many interventions, still are not making progress? And this is where our pilot course work actually concentrated. So Diane, if you could click on that link for me, please, and I promise I'm almost done. If you scroll down, I think, and click on Chris Lemon. Can you scroll down?
What are intensive interventions and why are they important?
Intensive interventions are interventions that require professionals to make decisions using data to improve instruction for individual students that have not responded to standard protocol at Tier 1 and Tier 2. So in a sense, you can think of intensive interventions as a process instead of a product. So what we're talking about when we're talking about intensive interventions are having teachers start with the standard protocol, sometimes say reading program, implementing that program, and collecting data and trying to determine what parts work, which parts do not work. And then using the professional judgment, the student's response, and data to determine what changes need to be made to that instruction to make it effective for their student. So in a sense, intensive interventions could be a variety of different things. There are a variety of ways that you might intensify instruction by decreasing group size, increasing the amount of time the student spends in a certain intervention, or focusing on different academic skills, maybe some academic precursors may be would intensify the intervention. So since there are a variety of ways of doing it, but what we're talking about when we're talking about intensive interventions it's more of a process than something that comes out of the box. And why are those things important? In the sense of the last decade, we've done a pretty good job in schools in improving Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction. So we often, particularly in elementary and grade 3, we have a lot of quality Tier 2 standard protocol interventions that are effective for many students. And over this period of time, we've reduced the number of students who continue to need additional, more intensive instruction. However, there still remain a portion of students, particularly those with disabilities, who are not responsive to quality Tier 1 and Tier 2 standard protocol instruction. So So it's this group of students that are in most need of intensive intervention or something more individualized, matching their needs. That is more responsive to professionals using data to make instruction. The reason they need these are that using current standard protocols, the students are not benefiting, not being met with their goals. And unless we can train professionals to use data and kind of go through a problem-solving process of improving current standard protocol standard protocol interventions to match the individual needs of individuals with disabilities, then instruction will never be effective for that group of students. So if we are truly going to meet the needs of all of the students in school, we're going to need something more intensive, additional for that group of students.
So I hope you could hear that. So this is well-implemented intervention. This is what it looks like. So if you take a look at a picture of success here, this is an actual student in the district, and we use our process of data-based individualization. The student starts, the red line is actually what we call the aim line, or the rate of improvement line. So based on national norms, a formula is created of what we would expect for this student given this level of intervention, and this is what we're seeing in terms of progress. So you can see that this student pretty much immediately is responding well above the rate of improvement or our expected aim line. And this is pretty typical. Again here, and again here. So what we would do at this point is take a look and say, okay, how can we challenge this student further? Okay. This is an actual student, and I am going to just kind of explain it a little bit, kind of far away. This is a student who in 3rd grade began at was at a beginning 1st grade reading level. So certainly struggling with dyslexia. I use that word sparingly, but certainly in this case struggling with dyslexia. Came in with some advocates who said that there was only one way for this particular student to make that level of progress, and I challenged them and said, nope, we're going to apply the principles of data-based individualization. So in 3rd grade, she was reading at a beginning 1st grade level. She is now in 5th grade, and in January of 2018 made a nearly 500-point gain in her Lexile level, is reading at grade level with 97% accuracy and 90 words per minute. Now she needs to get a little bit higher in terms of her words per minute in order to reach that threshold, but certainly you can see that she started at a 2.2 in the beginning of 2016 as a grade point grade equivalent, and now is between that, is right approaching grade level. So certainly it works. This is one of my happy stories to tell.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So, I'm a parent, and I don't know a lot about education, and maybe I'm young, and I go to these meetings, and all of my peers and whatever, and say this is what, and you say, no, you have to do this, blah, 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 which sounded like a lot of big words that I may not understand. How do you help a parent to understand how you have the right, without using a lot of educational speak, and help reassure these young parents, some of them, who are intimidated, or emotionally, concerned about their child and want to make sure they get the right thing, and they come in with their own ideas and so on. So how does your staff do that?
So certainly presenting here to the school committee, to my superintendent, and to the big audience is, I use a different level of vocabulary and description and discussion. when we're sitting around the table and it's about your daughter Jane, you know, it's much more personal. And so the words that I use here are not necessarily the words that I would use there. And Mary sometimes, especially when we have a really intense reading issue, I'll ask Mary to join us. And, you know, by and large, it's about building a trusting relationship with the parents. This particular case, every week we sent progress monitoring data to the parents. So they had to take that leap, and then every week they saw their child improving. Every
Is
week.
this going on in all the elementary schools?
Yep, so at Hugh Cole and Colt Andrews, they had an early start because they were our two Title I schools that began the work with the National Center in 2012. But it was slow and it was painstaking because, you know, I've often used this analogy that directing special ed is like steering the Titanic with a teaspoon. Okay?
Yep.
Tough. It's tough work, you know. We've got to have all of our oars in the water together at the same time, rowing together. So, you know, we selected those two schools because they were our Title I schools. So we went through the learning process for a number of years. This last year we began work also to include Rockwell and Gutierrez, and they caught on much quicker because we had kind of worked out all the kinks of the process. Now, in addition, this year, we gained more grant opportunities so that Colt Andrews is also participating in a math-centered intensive intervention. And as well, this year, we brought it up to the middle school. So the middle school is going to be a whole different animal. So because just of the way middle schools function, and so they have been incredibly responsive and incredibly excited as we've worked with them one day a month to begin to implement this process at the middle school level. And meetings that are more right now at the high school, we're also implementing. They gave up pretty much on high schools and RTI a number of years ago. So I'm working with Dr. Burns and Dr. D in order for us to, you know, begin the actual implementation. Right now we're just looking at structures. Thanks, guys. Structures and how to actually work with high school in order to do that. You're quite welcome. And that concludes my story. Any questions that I can answer?
Yes, just a question, please. The whole social-emotional learning thing, I can't get a grasp on exactly what you're doing. You talk about interventions, and then you're talking about instruction. Is it classroom instruction that's taking place here? Is it
So with and you're talking about strictly with social-emotional?
Yes.
Okay, so we instruct, okay, we assess, if need be, we intervene, okay? We're beginning to build a framework by which we will implement through which we will implement in the buildings. That means we